On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, who has the most pressure to perform for the Birds on Thursday night in the preseason finale against the Indianapolis Colts? Plus, just how good is DeVonta Smith going to be in 2023? All that and more on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's podcast is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. Louie DiBiase riding solo today. My co-host Gino Camilleri. A much needed break this week as he is going to be getting married, which is really exciting for Gino. So that's tomorrow. So he's off until next Monday. Congratulations to my brother. So I'm going to be running solo the next few days, getting you ready for this preseason finale against the Colts. And then we move forward, crazy enough, to week 1 of the regular season against the Indianapolis, or I should say the New England Patriots. The Indianapolis Colts is this Thursday night at 8 o'clock. So I want to get into today because we did actually on Monday do our 53-man roster predictions. Gino and I both agreed we feel like we have a pretty good idea of who's basically a lock to make this roster now on offense and defense and who's pretty much done, right? Who doesn't even really have a chance to make the 53. I would say, is there a middle ground there? Like how many guys really have a chance still to make this team? I'd say, 3 to 4. There's probably 3 to 4 spots that are truly open. I'd say maybe an extra linebacker, an extra corner, another safety. It's really all on the defensive side of the football. Do you keep an extra defensive player? When it comes to offense, I feel like it almost is completely set when it comes to the teams 1 through 3. But I do want to get into that today. Who on this team has the most to lose tomorrow night against the Colts? And we will start on offense. That's the great thing, though. It's not a bad thing that we have no questions really of how many quarterbacks are going to keep, how many receivers, like who could still make this roster. The fact, I think when you're not sure of that, especially if you're still dealing with starting battles and depth spots, that means nobody's really, sometimes it could mean that 2 guys are both really good and it's a really tough decision. But other times, and for the most part, for the Eagles, I think on offense, when you look at the wide receiver position, the reason that we're not sure what receivers could still make it is because none of them have really stepped up. And so you kind of know already who is a lock. So on offense, who has the most to lose against Indianapolis? I don't know if anybody really has a lot of stock. I think a lot of these guys have stuff to play for, but you're fighting for jobs, I think, with another team or to make the Eagles practice squad. For instance, I think you look at running back Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon probably has the biggest opportunity of anybody on this offense heading into Thursday night. But I think it's, again, because he has a real chance to make another 53-man roster. At this point, I don't think there's any chance that Sermon is, upending DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, or Boston Scott. Those guys are, to me, locks as your top 4 running backs. And I don't think there's really any chance, just based on our 53-man roster projections and what the Eagles have done in their history, I don't think there's any chance they keep a 5th running back. The fact that they keep 4 now is new, because when you look at through the majority of the Andy Reid era and Chip Kelly and even Doug Peterson to a degree, the first few years of Doug, if I can remember correctly, I'm almost positive they would keep 3 running backs most of the time. So now they keep 4. I think Boston Scott's a very valuable piece of this team. So I agree with keeping that 4th guy if it is Scott, but I don't think there's any way they keep a 5th guy with Trey Sermon. I think they really liked Trey. They gave him every opportunity to make this team. They even used him as a kick returner the last few weeks to see if he can, make a difference in that way. They had him on the 53, all of last year when they picked him up off waivers from San Francisco. But I don't think overall, even if he has an incredible game against the Colts, that he makes this team. But I do think he's talented enough. He's a former 3rd-round pick where if he does have a good game, and even if he has an okay game, I think he ends up probably on another 53-man roster. I can't see him clearing waivers. I can't imagine, as much as I would love to have him back on the practice squad, can't imagine Trey Sermon makes it. But I do think he has the most to lose tomorrow night in the sense of of all these players that are fringe roster contestants, I think he has the best opportunity to land with another team and maybe even have an impact in a rotation in a backfield by committee. So I think Trey Sermon has a big opportunity against the Colts. I think Greg Ward is in a similar boat with Trey. I can't imagine the Eagles keep 6 receivers this year. Even with Greg Ward as steady Eddie as he's been, I don't know if he's worth keeping over an extra corner, safety, linebacker, offensive or defensive lineman. And to me, Tyree Cleveland obviously dealt with that injury. He's not making the team. Joseph Nagata has not done enough to me to warrant a roster spot. Greg Ward is probably the guy that can make the case, and he has a pretty good resume with this football team. And it would be great to get him back on the practice squad for year 8. But I don't think this time, and Gino made this point the other day, I don't think this time he gets back to the practice squad, because I think another team that's very wide receiver needy and doesn't have the stars the Eagles do from top to bottom, they could see Greg Ward as a nice veteran presence as your 4 through 6 receiver on the depth chart. So I think Greg Ward and Trey Sermon, they have a lot to play for against the Colts, but it's because they're fighting for a spot with another team's 53. When it comes to tight end, I think it's pretty much set. I don't think Dan Arnold's making this football team. I think it's Dallas Goedert, it's Grant Calcaterra, and it's Jack Stahl. And again, I always said Ty goes to the rookie or the younger player with more upside on a cheaper deal. That's how I feel about tight end with Calcaterra and Stahl over Arnold. But I don't feel great. They're not keeping Calcaterra and Stahl because they were so much better than Arnold. They're keeping them because I don't think anybody really made a huge impact. And again, I'm not really concerned about, we need more 12 personnel in this offense. I love the way this offense is designed, and I don't think you absolutely need a second pass-catching tight end to make this offense work, but it is unfortunate you really don't have that option. Again, it's something I don't want to need like the Eagles have in the past, but it would be nice to have that, as another luxury. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Calcaterra, he took some steps as a blocker, I think, this summer, but overall, still kind of the same, whatever type of situation at tight end. I'll tell you what, though, keep an eye out for this at the trade deadline this year. If the Arizona Cardinals stink and Zach Ertz is healthy, can we bring that back? Zach Ertz is tight end too? I think tight end is a position like we talked about all summer. If Howie Roseman was going to add another player, what position would it be? And we said linebacker, we said safety. I think tight end is a spot to watch this regular season before the deadline. And I think Zach Ertz would make a whole lot of sense for this football team. And again, he's good enough where maybe he doesn't want to be that kind of backup that barely play. Again, they don't use 12 personnel like they did when it was Goddard and Ertz in the past. He could be Zach Ertz still is, when healthy, a legitimate starting tight end in this league. But if he wants to compete for a championship and he wants to come home, that's something to keep an eye out for sure. When it comes to offense, again, I don't think anybody else really has a huge opportunity Thursday night. I'm excited to see an entire game of Tanner McKee. He's been incredible. I think he'll play for at least a half, maybe 3/4, and then you'll see Ian Book finish off the game. Don't think you'll see Marcus Mariota in this one. Although, now that I say that, I feel like because of how bad he's been in these 2 games, maybe he needs a 1/4. But the majority of this game is going to be Tanner McKee, so I think that's exciting. But again, it's a great situation to be in when you have very little question marks on offense. You have no starting jobs available still. You really have very few depth battles going on. This offense from top to bottom is one of, if not the deepest in the league, and I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, they're the best. They're the alpha right now. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Andy Reid's the best play caller. Travis Kelce is the best tight end. But I think from top to bottom, when it comes to the starting lineup, the team that I do not want to game plan for the most when it comes to the various styles of talent they have, the ways they can pass the football on you in so many ways, the way they can run the football on you in so many ways, they can just beat you in so many different strategies. The Eagles' offense, I think, is going to be the hardest to prepare for this year in the entire NFL, because I think the passing game is going to take an even bigger step. Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, they've all been incredible this offseason, this training camp, with joint practices against the Browns and the Colts. It's why you haven't had to see a single starter play in these preseason games. Even last year, Jalen Hurts, he only played, a drive and a half against New York, and then he was out for the rest of the preseason because they were resting him. But this year, he didn't even play a single snap, and I think that was the right call. And man, I can't wait to watch this offense in a few weeks go up against New England. All right, let's continue on with the most to lose for some Eagles on Thursday night's preseason finale against the Indianapolis Colts. We'll head over to the defensive side of the football. Coming up next, right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Guys, today's show is sponsored by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs makes you look good. Bird Dogs, their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. That's the exact style that I go for now. I'm not into the early 2000s baggy look when it comes to pants or shorts, even the ankle. I like those tight fit joggers that Bird Dogs provides. The shorts, to me, they have that perfect length right above the knee, sculpted, fit to your body. Bird Dog shorts, they do that exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. They fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you can get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. That's huge. I felt like most of the time when I was wearing dress shorts, I had to sacrifice comfort. Not anymore with Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs uses an anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. If you're on the golf course, you're at that graduation party, whatever's going on in the summer for you. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter the promo code LockedOnNFL for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. Enter the promo code LockedOnNFL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you, and we thank Bird Dogs for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast today. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday. Louie DiBiase riding solo. Gino's getting married this week. Congrats to Gino and Jen. So he'll be back next Monday to talk some birds with me. Today I'm getting into who has the most to lose in Thursday's preseason finale against the Indianapolis Colts. On offense, there aren't really a lot of depth battles going on. I feel like this roster on offense is pretty much set. I think Trey Sermon and Greg Ward have the most to lose, but it's because I think they have a really good opportunity to make another team's 53. I'm excited to see Tanner McKee. I would like Marcus Mariota to show something, some sort of life in this game to make us feel better about QB2 heading into the regular season. But overall, I think the biggest questions that are still out there when it comes to this team are on defense. I think, and again, the players that still have an opportunity. I'll start with the guys that Gino and I talked about on Monday, the last three out, if you will. Like when we made our predictions, there were a couple guys we listed as guys that just missed. Some players that we were really trying to find a spot for, but it was a numbers game, and we prioritized some other positions and some other players. So like a player in that category for me was defensive tackle Kentavious Street. We ended up keeping, I think it was, we kept 6 defensive tackles, but we had Milton Williams as your 4. Of course, your top 4 is Cox, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis in no order there. And then, of course, rounding out the depth, we also had Marlon Tui-Peloto and Moro Ijomo making it over Street. Street's the veteran there. He did have over 6 sacks in 2022. But to me, Ijomo's been so good. Tui-Peloto looks like a much better pass rusher this year. He's your primary nose tackle backup to Jordan Davis. They're younger. They're on cheaper deals right now. Again, the tie goes to those players. Kentavious Street, he hasn't been bad this summer, but I think it's a numbers game for him. Could he convince them to keep another lineman? I wouldn't rule it out. The Eagles go heavy in the trenches on both sides of the ball, but Kentavious Street, I think this is again kind of like the same logic with Sermon and with Greg Ward, where Street has a really good opportunity to, catch on with another team if the Eagles do decide to keep Ijomo and Tui-Peloto over him. So I think Kentavious Street needs a big game here. Some guys that have a chance to actually make this Eagles roster still. I mean, most of what I've been talking about is who can make another team. Linebacker Nicholas Morrow. I think right now he's like the 4th guy of 4 that have a chance to play. Nakobe Dean's your alpha. And then to me, Zach Cunningham's in the lead to be that second linebacker in your starting lineup. And then to me, Christian Ellis has been that 3rd guy that has made a lot of plays this summer. He's a special teams ace. So to me, those 3 are locks. Nicholas Morrow, I think he's actually been good this preseason. Like, he's been way better than it sounded like he was in training camp practice. And keeping 4 inside linebackers, that's still pretty light at that position. The Eagles normally, I think, keep 5. Sean Bradley's out with a torn Achilles, so you have an extra spot open. Morrow might just make this team by default, but me and Gino had them only keeping 3 linebackers. And because they're going to go heavy with defensive back fronts this year, I should say packages with, 3 safety looks, maybe at times 4 corners. Nolan Smith has been playing some off-ball linebacker this summer. I think when you look at some of these safeties are going to be down in the box, like Terrell Edmonds, like Kavon Wallace. Maybe they convince themselves we only need to carry 3 inside linebackers, keep a guy in the practice squad. If we really need that 4th guy, we come to it the next week. So maybe Morrow is not like a massive special teams contributor. So Morrow, I think, he has a good chance still. Keeping 4 inside linebackers is not super bold. It's still going light at that spot, but he's competing with some other guys at other spots. Like, Eli Ricks is another player that I think needs a big game to really lock up a roster spot. The undrafted corner out of Alabama, I think he's had a great preseason. Love his upside. The Eagles, again, they kept 5 corners last year. Are they going to keep 6 or 7? Again, if they only go with 3 linebackers, then you can make the argument they'll go with 6, maybe 7. So Morrow's competing with a guy like Ricks. I think a guy like Mekhi Gardner, who's had a really good summer, another undrafted corner out of LSU. Length, explosiveness, forced a fumble on special teams, a gunner in that preseason opener against the Baltimore Ravens. Made some nice plays yesterday in joint practice against the Indianapolis Colts. So Morrow's competing with guys like that, like Eli Ricks, Mekhi Gardner. There's still a pretty hefty corner battle going on between Ricks, Gardner, and then you look at the slot, Josiah Scott and Mario Goodrich. Who's going to be that primary backup to Avonte Maddox? Do they keep neither? In my 53-man roster projection, I had them keeping Ricks over both Scott and Goodrich. I didn't have them really keeping that quote-unquote slot backup. So Goodrich and Scott, they're also battling against each other, battling against these other spots, other positions for a roster spot. Those are the main guys I would say have the most to lose. Kentavious Street, Nicholas Morrow, Eli Ricks, Mekhi Gardner, Josiah Scott, and Mario Goodrich. I think you can look at some other players like, edge rushers, Teron Jackson and Janarius Robinson. I think they showed a lot of promise last week against Cleveland. I love the upside of those guys. They were consistently getting to the quarterback, winning on the edge. I personally, if it was up to me, if I was Howie Roseman, I'm keeping at least one of those players over Derek Barnett. I think Derek Barnett's a lock. They, of course, restructured his deal to guarantee $3 million. I think I don't know why they want him as their 5th edge rusher, but they like Derek Barnett more than all of us do, unfortunately. So I think Jackson and Robinson don't really have a chance to make this team, but I think they kind of like these other players I've been talking about have a good shot to catch on with the 53-man roster, especially Teron Jackson. I would love if the Eagles could find a way to get Janarius Robinson on this practice squad. Just the overall frame, the physical gifts that he has, I would love to keep developing him as a potential depth piece long-term. I mean, his length, his get-off, the explosiveness for somebody that long is impressive. And so I think another team could see him as a nice developmental piece to keep on a roster. But I would hope that one of them can get to the practice squad because I think both should be priorities over Derek Barnett. Unfortunately, I really don't think they are. So, and then you could look at at safety. I think Justin Evans is trying to lock up a spot if they're going to keep 5 safeties. I think he probably is a lock, though. I mean, he's been getting first-team reps even this week. Joint practices yesterday against Indy. He was rotating in next to Reed Blankenship, as was Terrell Edmonds, as was Sidney Brown, as was Kevon Wallace. Sean Desai, he is throwing all of them on the first team with Blankenship's the only one that doesn't move. He is entrenched as a starter. The other 4 players, it's going to be Sidney Brown eventually, but I think the other 4, right now it looks like it's safety by committee. Plus, they used Justin Evans as a returner last week. I don't think the product, the result looked very good, but they're using him in different ways. He did play with the Saints last year, so I think Justin Evans is probably a lock to make this team. But some other guys on defense, they absolutely have a lot to play for tomorrow night on all 3 levels. All right, guys, coming up next, I got to talk some DeVonta Smith. I have a different thought about DeVonta, just based on how good he's been. I want to know your thoughts coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and then eventually hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, they help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Eagles fans, we are wrapping up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles, and I want to talk some DeVonta Smith, and he has been absolutely incredible this year. Last year, he broke the single-season receptions record for the Birds with 92, had over 1,000 yards, over 100 yards in the Super Bowl. He was great in the playoffs against the Giants, against the Niners, against the Chiefs. There isn't a whole lot to say about how good DeVonta is. Like, we all know this. He was this good at Alabama. He was this good as a rookie. Instantly was the go-to target in this passing offense in 2021. Took an even bigger step last year. Plays on the outside, in the slot. This guy can literally do everything, and he's been cooking defenses in practice as well. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw those 2 contested catches against the Colts yesterday. Absolutely incredible. And that's something he doesn't get enough credit for, is how good of a contested catch receiver he is. Like, we all know he's a top 3 route runner in the NFL. We all know how long he is, how explosive. The footwork is elite. It's on another level. He's a really good, underrated run after the catch receiver. But one thing, and I think it's probably because of his frame, people don't view him as like that go up and get it receiver. He absolutely is. He is, again, he doesn't have the frame for it, but his length, his body control makes him, like Alshon Jeffrey. Again, he makes catches that look a lot like Alshon. And again, it's in a different style compared to Alshon and Mike Williams. He isn't that big, giant body. But again, as I said, the body control, the length allows him to make those same plays. That's what he did against the Colts yesterday. I mean, you look at those go up and get it plays he made against Washington last year, week 3, the Christmas game against Dallas. I mean, those catches were absolutely unbelievable. And he was making those against the Colts yesterday. And it got me thinking, again, because I'm trying to find different ways to talk about these stars. It always drives me nuts. I always wonder how somebody in media covered the New England Patriots for the 21st century. Like those 20 years of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Like when you're at Super Bowl number 6, what else do you say about these guys? And so I was thinking about that yesterday. And with DeVonta, I was just thinking about, his overall complete skill set, because I was thinking about his contested catch ability, his run after the catch, and how he's so much more than just an elite route runner. And because of that complete skill set, I wondered, how many receivers would I genuinely take? Like, if I'm a GM starting a franchise, how many guys am I actually starting with at wide receiver 1 before DeVonta? Like, is DeVonta Smith right now a top 3 receiver in the league? I would say no. But to be completely honest with you, if I'm a general manager, there are only 2 receivers that I'm keeping that I'm starting a team right now over DeVonta. When it comes to, again, overall skill set, age, everything like durability, everything like that. The only 2 guys I would take over him are Justin Jefferson and I think Jamar Chase. That's it. I would take DeVonta over A.J. Brown. I would take him over Tyreek Hill. I would certainly take him over Jalen Waddle and some of these other young receivers that came into the league with him. Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin. I mean, you name it, all the stars of the game, Stephon Diggs. I think DeVonta Smith, the only 2 that I'd start a team with over him, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And even that, I think it's really close. I mean, with Jefferson, he's obviously the best receiver in football. So you take him number 1. Jamar Chase would be my second guy. But I think, again, from an age perspective, from just an overall complete skill set perspective, DeVonta would be my guy. The way he carries himself, the maturity, I think he's going to age really well with how good he is as a route runner. His separation when he does eventually lose that, initial burst off the line of scrimmage, that run after the catch ability. I think he's going to age very well in this league. He's so good as a contested catch guy. He's so good run after the catch. He can play inside. He can play outside. I think it's not really that bold of a take. I think DeVonta is going to be this year. And Darius Slay said it himself in a press conference last week after practice. DeVonta Smith has the upside to be the best wide receiver in the NFL. And he said he wouldn't be surprised if he becomes that guy this year. I wouldn't either. Like last year, he was amazing, especially down the stretch. When Dallas Goedert went down, Smith blew up. Like he was the best receiver in the second half of the season in the playoffs, even over A.J. Brown. I think there's even another step to go, especially if the Eagles start passing the football more. I think there's another level to DeVonta's game that can be tapped into this year, and I cannot wait to watch it. All right, Eagles fans, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Shout out to our everydayers, Monday through Friday, for making us your first listen. We will be back tomorrow for a recap of Eagles-Colts. The Birds preseason finale wraps up, and then we focus on the regular season. Louie DiBiase signing off as always. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.